I'm a guest curator for the Icons of Africa Center, and it's something that I was invited to think through the legacy of the Africa Center. I used to work at the Africa Center. I was working with Africa Center from at least all home in Covent Garden from 1986 to 1994. When we started talking about the icons of the Africa Center, if we go downstairs, we started with Malanga Tamangwenya, one most celebrated artist. And people don't realize how much culturally they were immersed with the idea that you were artists like Malanga Tamangwenya. We were able to converse with the idea of movement of arts. The last time Maya Angelou came to London was at the Africa Center. The last time she came in the United Kingdom was at the Africa Center. So given that I'm just introducing it, and most important for me was that when I first met Sokari Douglas Camp, 1987, she impressed me. And she's so small, and she was making these gigantic bolts and about everything else. She was soldering everything that she was doing in talking about the River State, about the kind of idea that becomes so fashionable, the climate, about these what's happening in the about these kind of multinationals polluting the environment in the region. She was one of them, still consistently talking about women, the empowered women. It's like the storyline, and she's been very consistent. In 1987, she agreed to be part of her first artist in residence. She was so generous to accept the invitation from the Africa Center to become one of our artists in residence. She went to Nigeria. She wanted to do something which was quite extraordinary. That was the idea, to colonize Covent Garden and then bring Zakia kind of dancers in Covent Garden. And that was, I thought that I was the only person that I ever say that I kept ever since 1987 that inspired. This is a Kiapu that she did in 1987. She brought all the people from the dancers, the performers, complementing an exhibition that we did in 1987 at the Africa Center. Not only the sculptures, but also the paintings. And ever since, she's gone on to do so many things around the world. And they had a conversation with Bonnie Greer. She's a playwright. Bonnie Greer is just one of generous people that I've met. I remember trying to figure out, because you keep on hearing this playwright, writer, that you hear on radio, she's up here. And I was struggling to find somebody to talk about African cinema, to one of the greatest African filmmakers ever lived, pioneer, considered Osman Sembene. I remember the image of Osman Sembene embracing Ngugi wa Thiong'o at the Africa Center in Congo. The series, the Icons of Africa Center, recognizes the importance and legacy of this organization. Without taking too much of your time, inviting Bonnie Greer and Sokari Douglas Camp.
Good evening. It feels like the afternoon because the sun's out.
It's a beautiful sun.
Yeah, peculiar weather. Bonnie thought that it would be a good idea to show you a video first. This is a video.
Can I say why I want to do that? Because I didn't say it to Sokari. We're in the presence of a great artist, and I think you all know that. Anyway, that's why you're here. I don't want to do a celebrity interview. I'm not interested in that. I want you to enter her world, and then I will proceed from Sokari's world. I think that's what you do with a great artist. That's what I did with Sembene. You just let them have the field, and they take us where we need to go. It's over to you, Sokari, and I will follow you after that.
So this video is by EBA Camp, who's my daughter. Thank you so much.
Me?
Yes,
you. I just, Sokari, one thing I think about when I look at the medium that you work in, my father was a steel worker. He worked at night in a factory with steel, and steel put food on our table, gave us our Christmases, sent me to school, but he took our dad away from me because he worked at night, and that we never saw him. So I hate steel. So I'm trying to. Could you tell me a bit about steel? How did you choose that medium, or how the medium chose you? I don't hate it anymore, but I mean, I grew up. Steel took away my father, so I'm just interested.
What a pity.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, pity. Well, I got attracted to steel just because some of my sculptures very early in my career were kinetic. So I worked with machines. So I'd find these machines around the British Museum. There was a motor shop where you could buy cheap old machines, and there was a boffin in there that would tell you how to wire it up. And I had to fix these machines to frames, steel frames. And the technician in college suggested that I go and learn how to weld, because I kept on asking him to weld these boxes. I made these steel boxes for machines, and then my father died during my MA course. And I made a memorial for my father, and the memorial was a steel bed. And just by wearing goggles and having fire nearby, so that no one could come near me, was a very good way of mourning, and it helped me through a bad time.
I think
Yeah.
maybe in a sense, I mean, I don't know how to frame this question, but let me just say it out loud. It is unusual for a woman to take a metal to work with. This is a very aggressive metal in that you have to shape it. You need fire to work with it. And you say very casually, you just sort of walked around and you saw steel shops. But what is it in the metal itself? What is it in it that makes you feel that this is where you have to go? Other people choose oils. Other people choose, paper, whatever medium. You chose a very dangerous and brutal material. Are you taking that for granted? Because I'm not. I mean, just how did you come to do that?
I picked metal. Just because I started off early on kind of hardening things with resin. So I'd get fabric and dip it in the most smelly resins and things to harden it, so that I could put movement in my work, so that you'd have a piece of fabric that would stay stiff in a certain way. And when I realized that I could use sheets of metal that could stay put in the same way as the fabrics, that was my eureka moment, you know. And playing with fire as an African woman is not a big deal, just because women in West Africa, anyway, have huge bonfires that they have to deal with to cook meals and stuff. And
See, but I'd be afraid of the fire. See, that's why
yeah,
I'm saying is that that's fascinating to me
yeah,
because the fire is the part that would keep me from it. You know, it's the way that you got to smelt it, you got to heat it up, you got to put goggles on, you got to have a torch, you have to have all of these things
yeah,
to make this. And for me, that would have been the reason I would not have approached it. So that's fascinating to me when you say the fire is a normal thing.
absolutely. And you know, people sort of talk about metal as if it's incredibly foreign, but all of us are wearing earrings and bangles and rings, and
But we don't make
yeah,
them. You see what I'm saying? See, what I think I'm saying is that I can see the end result. I can see this magnificent piece. I can see the end result quite easily. I'm talking about the genesis. You see, because there's a moment, and I'm sure as when you began as an artist, there's a moment of cognition, I would say, where this medium and you met each other, and you
yeah.
knew that that was yours.
I don't even think it's mine. It's not mine. But I enjoy it very much. We like playing together. Yes. Um, it's a great joy. You know, making stuff in my studio. I get totally engrossed in it. Love it.
I think it's extraordinary. I mean, I have to say because it is one of the things for me that is so powerful about what you do is your sort of engagement with this metal, with your shaping of it, um, and it makes it you make it for me. I'm just saying for myself. You make it fluid. You make it poetic. It becomes malleable. It becomes contactable. It becomes accessible. It becomes rhythmic. It becomes fluid, and it is it's a hard thing. It's a difficult thing. So that's why I was trying to sort of tease out that passage to that beautiful malleability that you have with this steel, which
Yeah,
is amazing.
I kind of explain to people that you know, working with sheet metal is easier than housework.
Okay, I want to try. I'm going to do this.
I don't know what to say. It's easier than housework. You know, being able to kind of imagine and express different kinds of fabric is a very, very important part of my life as a calamari woman, where instead of going to an art gallery to look at paintings, open air performances like this, which was Sekapel, Men That Dance is the meaning of Sekapel. And these guys would come out as supernatural beings, which is, you know, I didn't know what sci-fi was in the 60s, but it was in front of me in my hometown.
In a natural state of being. In a natural state of
Yeah,
being.
amazing beings,
Yes.
connected to kind of gods, and men turning into gods was the theatre in my childhood. So I wanted to bring that to London. And with the help of being a resident artist at the Africa Centre, the first resident artist, I was able to bring 17 of these players. And they came out of the Africa Centre as if it was a shrine, and went into Covent Garden Piazza as if it was a village square. And it was just terrific to kind of make it our home at that time.
You know, it's amazing to me. And pardon me for looking at my phone, only because I stupidly wrote my questions on the phone. So I'm looking down
It's
at it.
fine.
All right. What's amazing to me and beautiful and powerful, and also for me, the state of being of an artist, the way you a great artist, the way you're talking about it is for you a process that's normal, which is actually what you're talking about, something quite extraordinary to me. The fact that you were able and you felt able to, and you did it, to take these realities and bring them here, translate them, and keep translating and also keep creating in that way, which I think is you created a language, Sokari. You created a language that people have to engage with all the time, and dialogue that people have to engage with all the time. And for you, it's a natural process, like you say with the steel, but it isn't really. So that's what's really strong and amazing about it. And I think also you talk about people sometimes. Hang on, people forever telling me what I am, and that was a quote. People are forever telling me what I am, like I'm doing at the moment. What does that mean?
Well, they tell you you're an African, and they tell you that you're Black British. They tell you you're a woman, and they tell you what you can't and can do. But you know, you wonder if they're actually seeing you. That's the sort of main thing.
Do you think you've
I find.
overcome that, or are you still overcoming it, or does it matter?
It matters very much, but I think I have overcome it in a sense because I've got old. Actually, you know, you could grow past it, but it's still there. People saying extraordinary things, or just not accepting you in British society, which goes without saying for a lot of people of different heritage. But if we could have the next image, that would be good. Leave them at the very bad because they're. Oh, go back.
Went back fast.
Oh, go back. Go back. There, yeah. This image is terribly good, but it's photographs, scanned photographs of these guys performing in Covent Garden Piazza, and you know, I love the clothing that they're wearing. We call them Donny. It's a kind of elaborate. It's a bit like an agbada if you're Yoruba, but in the Delta it's called a don for men, and of course it's a dress, you know, a dress for a man, which is meant to be a big deal nowadays. And you think, well, you know, my father wore a skirt, and you know, a lot of men wear skirts, and this has been my heritage forever. So some of the things that are being agitated here, one would like to say old-fashioned, but you know, younger people are very, very conscious of fluidity, and so am I. But you know, my interest goes a little bit further in that. I like to add a spiritual side to it as well, and the spiritual side was very, very evident when these dancers came. They would, you know, have kind of special sayings and things to edge themselves on and lie bait to the gods in Covent Garden with a bit of gin. You know, in the 80s, all of that was quite novel and surreal because we weren't in Nigeria. We were in Covent Garden, in the center of town.
So Kari, I really have to ask this because I'm still, I don't feel myself, and you talk about being in this country.
Yes.
I personally don't feel that there are things that I can do. I don't feel that, I still feel there's a bit of knocking at the door. There's a bit of, you're astounding me because it seems to me what you're saying is that you felt a kind of space for yourself, or maybe a kind of permission for yourself in a way, where you can make a picture like that, you can make an image like that, which to me, I'm looking at these incredible, you know, costumes and outfits
Yeah.
against these sort of
Georgian
things.
buildings. I
And that
love
is
it.
that's amazing to me.
Love
and
it.
and the Georgian aspect of it is, to me, what the drama is. And you feel to me like someone who can say, oh, I can engage with that. I can do that.
Yeah.
There's space for me.
Yeah.
How did you get there?
How did I get?
Yes, ma'am. And you know why I'm asking you this, don't you? Because where we are now, and you know, as my mama would say, bless them, we are in a space now where people are knocking on doors and saying that this space that you occupy, and I know is at great, you know, cost and work and your studies. So I'm not trying to make this sound easy, but this space that you occupy as Sokari artist is something a lot of people are saying now they cannot do, or they are not being allowed to do, or there is no way that they can do it, or they need something special to be able to do it. And 20, 30 years ago, you just walked and saw some steel and said, I'm gonna do it. So I think I'm asking, especially for younger people, where does that cognition, where does that come from in you? That, because you've taken space, Sokari. You know, folks ain't asked, you know, you just took space. So how did you do that? And I know you just did it, but
Yeah,
how
I
did
just
you?
did it.
Yeah, how'd you do it?
How'd you do it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's look at the next image. This is my degree show from the Royal College.
It's beautiful.
Had an awful lot of support, and I brought my hometown to London. Yeah,
It's beautiful.
yeah, because you know, writers do.
They do
Yes.
sometimes.
Yeah,
You're
no,
right.
you're minding your own business, and they bring places to your
That's it.
sitting room. Yeah, and so I hope to do that with my sculpture. And you know, back then, oh gosh, in the 80s, this wasn't called an installation. this was just for
This was your
plonking
work.
your art in a
Yeah,
space.
that was your work. That was your work.
But you know, this installation was meant to be women on the shoreline, which is my position in Kalabari society, is that I'm a viewer. I was never a person that performed. The performances were done by men, but you know, women could look as a critic and an encourager, because it was your father, your brother, cousin, whoever, suitor that was performing in town for you. Yet they joined a society that was spiritual, so it was a spiritual activity. These guys formed a club where they were in touch with things that women weren't meant to know about, but we could watch. So women are on the shoreline, and they're watching a boat, which would have been like a long boat.
It's beautiful.
And the long boat here was kinetic, so the oars moved back and forth, and the women were basically static.
I'm intrigued by the distance between the women and the boat.
Yes.
How did you determine it? I mean, how did how did you determine that distance in terms of its length and width and breadth and all of that?
Oh, well, you know, this is kind of amazing degree show space at the time. And it was kind of
Just informed by
it was amazing space. You know, that they get tiny little cubby holes nowadays because there's so many students in all of these colleges. And back then it was 5 people a year.
Somebody like me would come and see the installation, see the exhibition, and I would start interpreting every piece of it. You're telling me something very practical. And you know, something that just, and I would come in and I would look at this and this and this, which is the power of what you do, because I would start reading that space. I would start reading that space between the ladies and the sisters and the boat. And then that's what's fascinating, because you're extremely practical in many ways, and very practical artist who creates these sort of transcendent, deeply, they're transcendent work that just opens and opens and opens and opens and
There's
opens all the
a lot
time.
of layers.
Yes, it's incredible. And it's
Yeah.
interesting to me to hear you be very practical about it. You know, you say, well, that was because of this and this and this and this.
Yeah.
And that's the power of it. You've been quoted as saying, my work has totally been informed by living in England. My work as an artist confirms my heritage and my life in London
Yes.
as a person of African descent. We have England, we have London. We've been talking a lot about your homeland, a little bit, and about what is England? What is London in relation to that? Because this is where the art comes from.
Let's look at the next image.
This
This is a masquerader, and the masquerader has a boat, and the boat has the name of my niece actually carved in it. Because she couldn't come to England at the time, they kept on refusing her visa because they were afraid that she'd come to stay, and she's actually succeeded, and she's stayed. But Calabar people have always imported things and kind of not only imported, completely swallowed up things like bowler hats. We wear bowler hats, which are very, very English. But on a Calabari man, it looks very dapper and looks as if, you know, it was invented in the Niger Delta. The fusion that informed me as a black woman in London. That's why I found these costumed figures so interesting, because they seemed so other, because there was no Michelangelo like naturalistic, you know, I am making a human being kind of thing about making a structure like this. So it was a chance to describe something that I was very familiar with, yet kind of challenged the way that people would normally look at a figure.
So, Kari, was there a moment, because I'm still trying to get you to answer this question, was there a moment or moments, because I am in awe of your not only your work, your wonderful work, your confidence. So it's yes, confidence. That's interesting to me, because is it, well, you went to art, formally trained, went to art college, art school, all of that. Was there a moment in that education or anywhere where you knew that you could do this and maybe survive? Because the other part of this question is that part of being an artist, creative, whether you're a painter or a writer, is always a question of whether you can survive as that thing, whether you can keep living, whether you can carry on. Because, you know, most creative people are in shops and blah, blah, blah.
Broke.
Say that again?
Broke.
Yeah, absolutely. 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 So how do you, but yet you kept going, you kept moving, you kept growing,
Yes.
you kept working. Where did that come from?
Oh, family.
Okay, that's where I want to go. That's what I'm
Yeah.
listening to. Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me about the family.
Oh, well, the family, I was brought up by an English anthropologist who was married to my sister. And this chap sent me to school and supported me and encouraged me to be interested in art, because I wasn't very academic, and he was an academic man. He was an anthropologist and a philosopher, and spoke.
He saw something. He saw something.
He saw something in me, yeah, and he encouraged it.
So, Kari, I had to get to that point, because I you know, we're looking at Stephen, and this day of his murder,
Yes,
was for me equivalent to the assassination of Dr. King. I could not. I mean, it took me, let's see, It took me 50 years to even listen to King's voice, to Dr. King's voice. I couldn't listen to it because on that day was so traumatic for me. And when Stephen was murdered, that day was so traumatic for me. Um, it changed the country. It changed the country totally.
Yes.
And I'm glad that you said what you said about family. And he was lucky to have wonderful parents and family. But I'm glad that you said that because I think what's missing sometimes for people is that permission. Is for someone to recognize you. You were recognized at a point where you have what you have now. You have your confidence, your ability to say, I'm a great artist. You know, we wouldn't say that, but I mean, you just do your work.
Yes.
And everyone else says that's what you are. But
Sometimes.
yes, sometimes, but they do. And it's that kind of root, that sort of, you're good, you can do this, that so many people are missing, so many people don't have. And I feel in a sense, and Stephen had this postmortem, he has this postmortem in this beautiful work.
Yes.
How do we speak now? We're the same generation, roughly.
Yes.
How do we speak now to a generation of people who, I wouldn't say are searching for identity, but are searching for some kind of permission to be able to do the things that they need to do as creatives? I'm talking about artists, creatives, and so forth. How do you, with the gifts that you have and your wonderful beginning, how do we speak to these children, these people now? So crowded, it's so hectic, to sort of express themselves as themselves, because that's what you're doing. You're not imitating anybody. You're not looking at anybody. I mean, you as an artist, as an artistic education, you know who your antecedents were, or were out there. You know what's out there. You know what the field is.
Yeah.
How do we work to make this kind of permission or feeling of confidence in that they need to have? It's so,
well, you know, looking at my my daughter who made the film, who's an artist, as well as she's an artist. They don't need permission. Maybe she's coming from a privileged life, but there are kids in her circle that are just doing things for themselves because they live in this incredible city, you know, or they're all British. So, you know, I think a lot of children are doing things to celebrate their multicultural heritage, without a doubt. And you know, I'm learning from some of these youngsters, like Yinka Laurie, who's promoted by this space, this new space at the Africa Centre. And you know, he's had shows at the Design Museum, and he's not even 30, is he? He's not 30. So these kids are grabbing of what they can and running.
But there's a great, and I'm interested in this, you know, the great cohort of people. I feel that creativity is a birthright. I think as human beings, that's what we are. That's what we do. Now, whether we can, you know, get to another space is different.
Yeah.
And sometimes it feels like there isn't a lot of space for people to discover their own voice. There are people, you know, of course, there are young people who are out there and they're doing incredible things. But it seems like, and I think what you have kind of implied in your own work, is that creativity, this expression of the self, is a birthright. It is something that everyone should try to aspire to a certain extent. And I think it's becoming harder and harder to do because it's so crowded. It's so regulated in a sense, even by social media, by all of this, there is a regulation. How do people get to be rebels? Because that's what I'm saying too, because that's what you are as well.
There are things that push you, aren't there?
Like
Meeting incredible folk. This piece came about because of the inquiry at the Elephant and Castle. Although, Stephen's murder happened in southeast London, it
Yes.
wasn't on our door.
Yes.
So you kind of think, oh, try not to think about it.
Yes.
But the inquiry was at the Elephant and Castle, and they just kept on and on. It was kind of this kind of propelled constant news about how it was going and how they were really pushing to convict the guys that murdered him. And it made me make this because talking amongst friends and things, the title came out, which is The Cross We Bear. And it's made of a sort of glass container. So it has the air from the time this stuff was happening. And Stephen's pictures from the Standard.
Yes.
And
I
put
remember
on,
those. Oh, yes.
yeah, you kept on. He was like part of the family, And they always had the same picture with a sort of stripy shirt. And so I've got that on acetate and the British flag. And his mother, when she saw this, I have to tell everybody that she didn't like it at all.
I'm not surprised in the sense that
Yeah.
because Sokari, you're a poet. And,
But
sometimes
it's
poetry, a poet is very difficult sometimes
Yeah.
for people to, because a lot of people live in prose. And poetry is another dimension. You're a poet who has found a way to express your poetry.
Yeah.
And as I'm talking to you, and as I'm looking at this, that's the fucking difference, okay? Because people can splash paint and make things, and they're strong things.
Yeah.
There are very few poets working in the space that you're working in, and you're one of them. You're one of them. And I wanted to get to that point with you because it's very, very important. We need to feel as human beings, especially as people of color, especially as women, that we can cross the threshold of poetry, that it is okay to do that. We don't have to be standing for something or being something or whatever. We can enter the realm of poetry and within poetry express or allow the medium to express itself. And this is when you're living in prose, which most people are forced to live in, this is a transcendent piece. It's a mighty piece.
Yeah.
And I think Doreen has lived in prose, and she's had to. This is poetic. This is poetry. It's beautiful. It's magnificent. It's magnificent. And I really have to applaud you for it because it's incredible. Does anyone want to ask Sokari, say anything or whatever? Okay, yes. Do you need a
Thank you. I just wanted you to elaborate more on Stephen's mum not liking it. Why? What was it that she didn't like? And yeah, what was that conversation like for you? And how did you feel?
I felt very worried actually that I'd insulted a woman that was going through so much. But then I met Bonnie, who said it's all right to have an opinion as an artist, and just leave it like that because what Doreen Lawrence has gone through is just unimaginable.
It's unmentionable, yeah.
Unimaginable. So, I backed off, and I know her from a distance, and we never talked about the work again. But I think this is something that artists who touch on current affairs go through things like this. So yeah, this is my first example of going through something like that.
Yes.
So my question is, how did you make it possible? Because you said that you were the first resident artist there.
I was, yeah.
And then you had space and time to organise for 17 people to come from Nigeria.
Yes.
I mean, I'm still on that fact. So please tell us how you actually delivered that.
How did I got a grant. There was the GLC at the time had grants.
It's the organisation, because you're already a resident artist.
Yeah.
So you're busy already in the space of the centre.
Yeah.
And then you decided that you wanted London to see
Yeah.
the parade.
Yeah.
Not a few people, 17. So did you want, when you first had a vision of this event,
Yeah.
did you tell yourself it had to be 17? It had to
No,
be
no.
15?
Could be it was what we could afford. Yeah.
Because that's commendable.
It was an amazing thing to get involved with, because it was my hometown, and I these guys knew me from when I was little, and they'd been studied by my guardian, who was also a member of this group, Sokari. And so, it was discussed amongst them, and, certain people were selected to come on this trip. And the chaps that weren't selected threw up a court case. I couldn't go home for a year. It wasn't easy.
Oh.
And, we had to, Nigerian Airways at the time sponsored the flight. Yeah, so, I went begging to the local governor, who happened to love art. This is when the country had a bit of sanity. And this chap liked art, and all kinds of checks were written. And we even had money for the guys' families, because, they were fishermen. And so it was daily food that their family needed. So we set all that out. And these chaps came over, and the story was that we got into taxis from Heathrow, thinking that we could stay in a hostel was found for them in Kennington. Oh no, Kensington. Yeah, there was some sort of hostel there, and one of the cabs got lost because he didn't know where this place was. So there were these Kalabari men that didn't speak English, and this cab driver that didn't know quite where he was going. That was before mobile phones, really. And the guy was freaked. The men were shrieking at the back of this car. And it was a ghastly summer, a bit like this one, where it was terribly cold. So we got clothes from everywhere we could to look after them and stuff. It was a story. We can have another image.
Good.
Sokari, tell us about this.
This is a piece called No War, No War. And it was made in 2003 as a proposal for the fourth plinth.
Aha.
And didn't make it, but it's in history books that there was this offer, because it was the amazing Iraq March
Yes.
time, when thing was still around.
Yes.
And he had that idea that London was such a fantastic city, and we should do something about London. Express something about London and put that on the fourth plinth. And considering that in so many countries you're not allowed to protest, we're joining those countries now, but then it was okay to protest. And if you went on that march, the bridges in London actually shook the
yeah.
numbers of people
Oh,
that
yeah.
that were on the streets on that day. And I decided that I wanted something like that on the plinth.
Well, it was an audacious piece of work because, of course, you know, the Trafalgar Square commemorates a massive naval battle
Yeah.
that defined England, and
Yeah.
the statue is dedicated to is the image of the leader of that battle. So you can put an anti-war piece in a battle square.
Yeah.
So it's very good. It is, and I hope it. You know that's a great provocation and a great gesture, and it might have been for some at that time too much of a shaker because because you would have walked into this. Most people don't think about Trafalgar Square. They don't think about what it's called. They don't think about what it means. They don't think about why it's there. And then for you to have been able to put that anti-war piece on the plinth and say stop. Basically, you said stop.
Yeah,
It was
shouting.
a stop sign.
Yeah.
And they said,
Yeah, Tony Flair didn't think it
yes,
was a
good
good
on you.
idea.
Good.
No,
Anyone
there was
else?
we can have another image.
Any? Yeah.
10 years ago, 2014, and you were both saying you want to help world conversation.
Really?
Where you think things have gone since then, whether you've made any progress in that direction or how things have gone since then?
Well, a world conversation. Well, we are having a world conversation now, aren't we? We're very concerned about the environment. We have to talk about that wherever we are in the world. And I suppose that's where we are now. Everyone has to think about the environment because we've only got one world. But this little piece is called Close to My Heart. And it's got a picture of an oil flow station in the Niger Delta.
That's incredible. Look at that.
Burning, they're flaring. And what they do is, in Nigeria is that they burn off the gas.
Yeah.
Here we keep gas so that we can heat our homes. In Nigeria, they just burn it off. I read that it's polluting the ozone layer so much that it's kind of fractured it in Australia, and white skin is getting cancer and stuff because of what we do in the Niger Delta.
Can I use that mic for just a
And
second? I'm
so,
going to get back to you.
Very, very early on, I realised that this was a world conversation, not just something from my little hometown, because of the way Nigeria was being used to extract oil.
So, Kari, how do you feel? And then I'm going to hand over to this lady. How do you feel about the argument or the point of view of, say, for instance, India, which says we're suffering, but we're not making this stuff. We're getting the blowback from it in terms of the rains, in terms of the climate. The same thing that's happening in bits of parts of Africa. I know, and I've seen pictures of landfills in Ghana where, people, we get rid of our clothes, we hand them over to what we think are the poor, and then they wind up in landfills in Ghana, which of course destroys the country. What do you feel? I'm not talking about reparations or payback or anything. What do you feel about that argument that these nations are making? We aren't making this emergency, but we're being the victims of it.
It's true. It's true. And somehow we've got to get people like ourselves in the first world to change our habits. And I think it's ordinary people to do it.
I think so too.
Yeah, because the chaps that we all vote in just don't seem to have that facility.
They wouldn't be able to be even chosen to be on for election if they did. That's the way the system. But yes.
I'm just curious as to whether, after your beautiful submission for the fourth plinth, if it was that ice cream with a cherry or that black cockerel that took its place, because I'd be very upset. But that's not my question. That is not my question. My question: you spoke about your daughter and her peers just doing it.
Yes.
I'm not sure if that's entirely possible if you don't have the kind of talent that your daughter appears might have. So I just wondered if, like many people in this room, I think, you've ever come across prejudice, discrimination at all in your career, because I know art is quite, without being too rude, it's not quite as black as it should be in some echelons, like the Tate or the National Gallery. I think it's changing now. So I just wondered if you've ever come across any challenges based on your ethnicity, your gender, etc. That's all. Thank you.
Good question.
Very good question. Yes, I've come across people. Like, yes, people don't realise that I'm an artist. Actually, I've walked to the Royal Academy and some man nearly fell over himself. I'm trying to be kind to me, and wanting to introduce the National Gallery or whatever to me.
Well, at least he didn't ask you for directions.
No, no,
He
no, no,
knows that you
no,
work
no,
there,
no.
right,
I was
right.
trying to walk in, and
Yeah.
he was, trying to be as welcoming as possible, as if I'd never been. Just-
As a dramatist, I love those moments. I just let them keep going, keep going, keep going.
Well, it's
Keep going.
fine. And I was telling Bonnie that at art school, the tutors really didn't know what I was talking about. I wanted to talk about spirits and things, because I guess my generation, Damien Hirst and co, wanted to be gods, and I came from a culture where if you try to be like God, you will pay.
So Sokari, how did you emerge? See, I guess that's what's being asked, and thank you for that question. I just want to know, okay, how did you emerge from the Damien Hirst, that whole nomenclatura of, early 90s art scene? How did you emerge from it? Because your education, everything you would have been in, you knew what was going on. You were in what was happening in that milieu.
I was on the edge of the
What was I'm
abyss.
saying? How did you come through it? Because that's what people want to know. It's like what they say in African Black America. How did you get over? How did you do it?
God knows.
No, you do. No, come on. How did you do it? Because people get swallowed up, they get smashed, they get discouraged, they get stopped, metaphorically, literally, and what have you, and you haven't been. So how did this happen? Because it's no, seriously, because people, I think especially people need to know, especially younger people, how do you overcome the academy?
Well, you just.
Well, since you don't look
You just.
Come on, Sokari.
No, you can do your own thing.
Absolutely
do your own thing.
But
Yeah.
you can do it. How do you survive?
How do you make money? You mean,
No.
Bonnie?
How do you? Because how do you survive? Because there's a point when you're an artist where you've got to survive. If somebody is not buying you or writing about you, or your teacher's saying, "Ooh, Sokari, what is this?" And you have to walk away from that environment and go, I know what I'm doing, and I'm gonna keep on doing it, even though this person
I was so lucky.
Okay, go.
I was so lucky because the Africa Center.
Okay, so it's
Can
luck.
you believe it?
Okay, no, I do. And you came in
at
a
the
certain year.
Africa Center as a student in my second year. I was so confused by these guys that were teaching me. I decided it was an idea to just go to the Africa Center and ask them for a show, because I felt as if I wanted to be seen by Africans at the time. So this director there at the Africa Center gave me a 3-day show, And I brought all my funny moving sculptures and things with the help of a technician from Central, which was quite nearby to the Africa Centre because it was all central London. And I brought all my rickety stuff and we painted the place till 3 o'clock in the morning. And I had this show, and there were amazing artists in London at the time that were exiles and running from South Africa, and some people that were just Londoners who were involved in the arts. And these guys sat me down and gave me tutorials.
Okay, so you and me,
Yeah.
and probably some of the people in this room,
Yeah.
came from an era where there were literally mentors. There were
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
who mentored you. And it
Absolutely.
didn't cost them anything to do it, in the sense that
Yeah.
they were able to have havens like the Africa Center. They were able to
Yeah.
have places. Okay.
So lucky.
Now, we're gonna go back to young people. Yeah, they look good on the surface.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are doing their thing on the
Yeah.
surface.
Yeah.
But you got, for instance, the situation of the Little Mermaid, and this young biracial actor. They have negatively bombed this movie. See, in our day, people couldn't do anything like that. They couldn't just go online and go, "We don't like Sokari," blah 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 blah, and then write negative reviews of your work, and they'd be serious.
Yeah.
This happens now, okay? And this is the other part of the reality that this generation has to face. I feel it
Yeah.
makes for a huge depression arc as well in a lot of young people. How do we, their elders, how are we able to instill or be a part of instilling within them the thing that I had to build and was able to help to build, and the thing that you have and you were helped to build, because a lot of that help isn't there anymore. Yes, no. Oh, okay. Okay, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. I was forgot to say this.
You made a big mistake to anchor this discussion in relation to gun and earth.
But we haven't done that.
I think we need to begin by just reckoning the intellectual ancestors, so to speak, to which make that work possible. And really nothing to do with the young artist work.
I disagree with you. I disagree.
What we have to do is to retrieve the signposts of our ancestors' intellectual. Okay? And perhaps we give to the present generation is best to try and think with Timber or Warego or Nkudivi to center the journey as an unfolding.
No contradiction.
And I think what I like about your work is precisely it located itself at that moment in which the story of the Africa Center was connected to its political ancestors. So that's the genealogical trace one would make to make sense of what you're trying to describe.
There isn't any disagreement with you, sir. I agree with you.
Disagree.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. But something miraculous.
Just a minute. I'm trying to be a gentle corrective, yes, so that both the histories that is not enable us to have something of a theories that attempt to work are understandable. And I don't think they are all from Norway. They appeared within a history. And that's precisely why it became magical at that moment. The second, again, if I emphasize, is the question of the spirits. Okay? There is no such thing as African philosophy that is not connected to what's going on in philosophies. And precisely because those two things are connected, you could only go and do work around gods and the spirits and so on. So that's if you like, the tutorial I would make intergenerationally to younger people about where you should look.
Sir, no one disagrees with you. In fact, that's almost the implied. I mean, I think we all in this room, many of us that is the implied reality. And this is, if you look at Sokari's work, as you say, you can see all of these linkages. That is not the conscious reality of how people are working. That's all I'm talking about. You're absolutely right. You are absolutely right. But the conscious everyday reality, and this is not anchoring in the Damien Hirst or anything like, it's not anchoring in that. But we, in my work with young people especially, there are forces that we didn't necessarily have to contend with. They were there, but they weren't as big as they are now. And I'm desperate to get people to be able to not be cookie cutters, not to be sort of influenced by influencers and all of that, which is a lot of what's happening. And if we can find a way to incorporate some of the things that this gentleman has said through some ways that we can do it, that's what concerns me. Of course, the Matrix is the history. Of course, the Matrix is the spirituality. Of course, the Matrix is all of that. But this is being lost, and that's my point. Yes. Yes, ma'am.
How you feeling?
Sokari.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's a question, but more of a comment. What I've noticed when Ms. Greer is, prompting me to say, where is this coming from? This
Bonnie.
Huh?
You can call me Bonnie.
This Bonnie.
Yeah.
This thing to keep going. And I think some other questions of like, how do you handle these obstacles? And even just the way that you're answering, I'm seeing why people want to support you and fund you is a clarity of vision.
Mm-hmm.
Because 30 years on, we're still asking, how did you get through? And there's a polite, tender, flirty way of being like, I just did. Not because you didn't get pushback or you haven't had bad days, but for me, if I'm projecting, let me know, there's just a clarity of vision that people want to be a part of. So I can see people supporting you. People saying we're going to fund 17 dancers to come in. Do you see that in yourself? There's something about you that, sorry if this is a bit too much, but as a specialist, that even if you weren't a public artist and you worked at the local Tesco, there's a specialist that you have, that you can't persuade or tell the young generation, this is how you do it, because you just had it innately.
Non, moi je voudrais remercier ceux qui m'ont invité ici parce que je viens de découvrir une artiste immense. Ce que je voudrais savoir, c'est comment conjuguer la douceur de votre façon d'être, de votre façon de s'exprimer avec la dureté de ce travail que vous faites, la sculpture. Et
pardon, mais traduction.
Oui, je vais traduire.
You are, first of all, congratulating her. Oui.
Avec la dureté de ce travail que vous faites, la sculpture, parce qu'on voit c'est un travail dur, d'une certaine brutalité, le travailler le fer, l'acier, etc. Comment conjuguer et la dureté de ce que représentent vos sculptures avec cette douceur que vous dégagez en parlant avec les gens, en vous exprimant?
How do you and please, if I'm stop me if I'm doing this wrong. It's how do you, and if I'm wrong, please stop me. How do you put such grace, such beauty, such sweetness, such gentleness into these sculptures, these that's I guess what merci beaucoup pour votre question. This is what I was trying to say. Maybe you need French to be able to express it. How do you put such fluidity, such sweetness into this work? Because it is very gentle, and it's very graceful, and it's very fluid. And this is the question. The beauty, and of course only the French could express this perfectly. And that's what I was trying to say. Absolutely what I was trying to say. All of your pieces with this very hard metal, very brutal metal, are so graceful, so
kind.
light, so beautiful, so buoyant, so léger. Just the beauty of that. How do you do that? You to know this.
Let's have another image.
No, I am too. And I couldn't put it into words as well as you.
Yeah.
How do you do this? Because that's what's coming out and that's what strikes me.
Oh, this is I think maybe I use metal as if I'm drawing.
Ah bon. Pour le pain, écrit. Yes.
Yes. I
How
think that's how
interesting.
it sort of
How
like,
interesting. That's
yeah.
very interesting.
And the thing was that I never used to put faces to my work either. So it was kind of empty clothing that people filled in for quite some time.
So Sokari, could we to this gentleman's point about, linking up with the ancestral and the ancestors and that, you said being in London, and I'm paraphrasing you, and if I'm, stop me if I'm wrong. Being in this country, being in London, has actually informed how you have taken all of these various elements, these energies, these feelings, to create the work that you do, being here.
Yeah.
And so that's the edge, isn't it, in a sense? That's the difference. I shouldn't say the difference. I'm using it in the French way. That's the edge that makes what you do. It's where you are.
Yeah. Yeah. I think if I was in Nigeria, I think my work would be totally different.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes when you have supposed African shades, they say, "Oh, and where do you live?" And you say, "Well, Elephant and Castle." And they want to kind of, I don't know, fix you somewhere. But yeah, I live in London, and this was outside the British Museum.
Yes, yeah, I remember that. Yes.
Yeah, and it
I
was
love
part
to
of
see the
the
juxtaposition.
African garden.
Yeah.
And it's women in Ashobi, and throughout well, on Instagram mostly nowadays, you see all these glorious Nigerian weddings with everyone with the same kit. At one time they used to sort of stop traffic in different pockets here in southeast London where there were churches, and these women would topple out with their huge gillies, and okay, it wasn't sort of Georgian houses around, but it was regular estates with these gillies coming out, and I made work
Wonderful.
that was
Wonderful.
sort of titled the pleasure of seeing you, just because it was a pleasure. They lit up.
I was on the board at the
Yeah.
time when you did that. I remember. Thank you, merci beaucoup for this observation. It was so important because you articulated for me, avec votre question, votre intervention, superbe, superbe, superbe. I couldn't put into words what I was feeling, and what you've done, and I think it's a very unusual thing, and it is your signature, and one of the things that the young lady was saying about you. By your artistry and your genius, you have melded, and that's why you use steel. You have melded your life, your background. You have melded the environment that you are in. You have melded your own practice and the freedom of your own practice, and made this work whose only consequence would have to be as light as that piece is. It's light. And that's what's amazing about it. And thank you so much, Sokari. You're genius. Thank you very much. We think we need you to have BLMI.
I know you work alone most of the time.
Yeah.
And I was wondering about how, I guess, people who are in art and who are interested in your process, in what ways they can see you work. Because I know that you do everything by yourself, which I find extraordinary, because some of your art is so big and huge and heavy. So I wonder, in what ways do like people who students especially who are interested in your art, I know you don't have an assistant,
No.
right? I know you work on it because I watched the talk. So I wonder, how do they then get into the room with you? Or is there a way they can get into the room?
No, if I get a commission, yes. I sometimes work with people. This time last year, I had some young man in the studio, and it was a lot of fun because he was a sort of graphic artist, and he learned how to weld and cut metal, and we made 2 huge sculptures that were outside the design museum for the summer. And that took us about a month, and it was great to have some extra hands in the studio. But I have great machines. I have winches and things which a midget like me can handle.
I have to say, and to say thank you again. It's very rare for an artist of your caliber to be able to be articulate, because I know, seriously, it's a deeply internal process.
Yeah.
Some people cannot speak about it, and they can't, not because they don't want to, they just can't.
Yeah.
And by your doing this with us today, you have made another piece of art, and you've made another sculpture, and it's something that people can refer to through the ages. And that's what's important. And that's what's important about the Africa Center, is not necessarily the past, not even the present, it's the future going forward. And so
Great.
thank you so much.
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you, Howard.
I want to express my deep gratitude of the artists and to you, Bonnie, your assistance.
Yes.
It really, I've heard Sokari speak a number of times, but not quite with the questions that you were putting, and not quite with the answers that you were giving to Sokari. So there was a dimension to this interview that I think is really original and very, very authentic.
It's the environment.
Well, I hope so. And I think given the fact that you work in steel, to produce such tender moments like this is remarkable to such a group of things. And I think it just expresses the humanity about you and about us, people, that there can be such tenderness in a harsh environmental world. Congratulations, Sokari. It's amazing. Thank you very much for honoring our invitation. I also want to thank the team here in Belfast, for doing this, for supporting. I want to thank Keith for curating this series.
Yeah, well done. Yeah, keep it going.
Center 60 years old next year. And I can imagine this icon series will take another 60 years to finish. Because there's so many people to honor. Some of them well known and some of them not so well known. But this is something that we have to do. But we also must look forward. So I just wanted to end by thanking all of you for coming and for really engaging on a level with these issues. And these questions, and for putting the questions that you did. I know you're here because you love Sokari, and I know you love Bonnie as well. So we go away, I think, replenished with something that's difficult to describe unless you're actually present and listening to it. So Sokari, thank you very much. I think you deserve some water.
Won't do. Cheers.